Good evening and welcome all. I am Kashfa Ambar, an intern at FPRC and currently pursuing my master's from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. FPRC is extremely privileged to have Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar as our guest for the Diplomatically Speaking initiatives of video interview. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you
Ambassador
very much.
Sajjanhar.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yes. Ambassador Sajjanhar has worked for the Indian Foreign Services for over 3 decades. He was the Ambassador of India to Kazakhstan, Sweden, and Latvia, and has worked in diplomatic positions in Washington, D.C., Brussels, Moscow, Geneva, Tehran, Dhaka, and Bangkok. He negotiated for India in the Uruguay round of multilateral trade negotiations for India-EU, India-ASEAN, and the India-Thailand Free Trade Agreement. A keen proponent of Indian culture, he was the director of Jawaharlal Nehru Cultural Center in Moscow, where he was instrumental in ushering a new paradigm in cultural diplomacy. Mr. Sajjanhar is fluent in English, Hindi, and Russian and has a working knowledge of French and Persian. His other interests include reading, music, and Indian culture. He has worked as the head of National Foundation for Communal Harmony. He is currently the president of Institute of Global Studies in New Delhi. Ambassador Sajjanhar writes and speaks on issues relating to international relations and Indian foreign policy. I would now like to invite Professor Mahendra Kaur, Director of Foreign Policy Research Center, New Delhi, to continue the proceedings. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kashfa, and
Yes,
very warm welcome to Ambassador Sajjanhar Sahab. It's a long back that we met and talked to each other, and now I think we can talk over Zoom. This is the only alternative available to us. As you know, this initiative was launched long back, and we are resuming it. And we invite policymakers, diplomats, academics, and media persons to share their views on India's foreign policy and relations. And in the first stage, we are having India's relations with various regions. We had discussed this issue of Look East policy in the previous episode. Now, today we hope to focus on Central Asia, India and Central Asia. As you know, Central Asia has become a hotbed of rivalry between major powers. And in the current political scenario, you can see that withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan has created another problem for the Central Asian states. So keeping all this in view, I would request you to explain, analyze, and educate the people about the role of Central Asia in world politics, and particularly in relation to India. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Sorry, go ahead.
So now it's up to you to begin the proceeding. I've already explained that we need to focus on Central Asia in relation to India relations. And secondly, in the current scenario, how Central Asia faces numerous problems because of political rivalry between major powers, neighbors, Russia in the north, China in the east, then Afghanistan, then Pakistan. So this has all created a sort of new problem, new issue, and India is little concerned about that. So I would like to help us understand how the perspective of various major powers, neighbors, has been on Central Asia, particularly in the context of current scenario.
Thank you very much, Professor Gaur, and thank you very much for having me on your show. Now, the question that you asked is indeed a very vast one. First, it is relations of Central Asia with India, and then the position of Central Asia in terms of the challenges that it confronts because of the evolving situation in Afghanistan. So I will try to speak on both these issues somewhat briefly, but of course, in our conversation ahead, you're of course most welcome to take it forward and focus on any specific issue. I'll not be able to, do justice to all the aspects of these two parts of the question that you have posed. But then I will try to, focus on the salient issues. So first, as far as India's relations with Central Asia are concerned, they are truly historic. They are truly civilizational. They are cultural and religious. We, of course, have had relations between India and what is now known as Central Asia from about 2,300 years ago, about 300 BCE, when we had the Silk Road traversing from India through Central Asia to West Asia and to Europe. And of course, there was trade and exchange of goods like silk, like spices, like precious metals, gold, silver, textiles. So a large number of commodities that used to be sold there, which were in great demand by the Europeans and by the Western powers. And of course, in addition to that, we also sent thoughts and ideas and philosophy and religion. In fact, it was Buddhism which traveled from India to Central Asia, and then subsequently it found its way to Western China. So this continued from 300 BCE till about 1500 CE. That's about 1800 years or so. After that, of course, the maritime route from Europe to India was discovered by Vasco da Gama in 1498 CE. And so this route was no longer either safe or economical, or it was too risky because there was too much of different power centers were emerging. We had also the founder of the Mughal dynasty, Babur, who came to India in 1526 from Fergana Valley, which is now a part of Uzbekistan. So our relations have been strong and vibrant at that time. Even during the Soviet times, we had good relations because these Soviet socialist republics, as they were called, Kazakh SSR, Uzbek SSR, Kyrgyz Socialist Soviet Republic, they had no other outlet but India. So in terms of Indian literature, Indian architecture, Indian music, dance, films, they were extremely popular in this region. But of course, once they got independence in 1991 from the Soviet Union, then the connectivity with India was affected. Of course, connectivity was affected even during the Soviet period, but then all the connections were through Moscow, so we didn't really feel that there was this loss of connectivity. But after they became independent, all of them became independent in 1991, when there was the disintegration of the Soviet Union took place. In fact, none of these countries wanted to become independent, and independence was really thrust upon them. So it is because they were really the last countries to declare independence. The Soviet Union disintegrated into 15 independent units, but these were the last countries, as I said, and Kazakhstan, which declared its independence on the 16th of December 1991, was absolutely the last. Russian Federation declared its independence in June of 1990. So they did not want independence because one, they are all landlocked countries. do not have access to the warm waters of the seas, and they did not know as to how they would be able to survive, because whether it is economically or politically, they were so very dependent on Moscow. So that is when it's now about 30 years. In fact, all these countries are celebrating 30 years of their independence. None of these countries have any direct borders, contiguous borders with India. Of course, de jure, if we look at it, then Gilgit-Baltistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir. That adjoins Tajikistan, but that is a part that is now under the control of Pakistan. So we do not have de facto any direct contiguous borders, and there is a problem of connectivity. So that is why, notwithstanding the fact that Central Asia is a part of our extended neighborhood, also the fact that we have had very ancient historical and civilizational links with this region, our relations with the largest 2.9 million square kilometers. It is the 9th largest country in the world. It is a little smaller than India. India is the 7th largest country in the world, but it is extremely rich in natural resources and mineral resources. And it has the world's 2nd largest reserves of uranium, world's largest producer of uranium ore. Similarly, Uzbekistan is a large country, not as large as Kazakhstan geographically. It has about 550,000 square kilometers of area, and its population is about 32, 33 million, which is the highest population in all the Central Asian states. Also, it is a doubly landlocked state, which means that even its neighboring countries are also landlocked. So this is an issue that really plagues all these countries. Turkmenistan is also an important state because although the population is very small, just about 5-6 million, but it has the 4th largest reserves of gas in the world. Uzbekistan is also extremely rich in cotton, in oil, in gas, in some of the other minerals and metals. And Turkmenistan, as I said, has gas, large quantities of gas. Turkmenistan has been trying to find alternative markets for its gas. Currently, it supplies gas to China. There is a pipeline that was made in 2009, and the capacity of that is about 60 billion cubic meters per year. But currently, the supplies are in the range of 35 to 40 billion cubic meters. Earlier, Turkmenistan used to supply gas to Iran as also to the Russian Federation, but those quantities have come down very significantly. So Turkmenistan wants to find alternative markets for its fossil fuels. So it's trying to construct the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. But there are problems both of security in terms of its passage through Afghanistan as also Pakistan, because both of them, these are terror-infested states. And Pakistan also, because of its hostility towards India, there is in terms of security and in terms of surety that there would be this supply through Tapi. If it were to come through, it would continue. So there are question marks on that. The sorry, 2 other states of Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan are comparatively smaller, and they do not have very much of fossil fuel in terms of resources. but they are extremely rich in water resources. So they are trying to construct hydroelectric dams, hydroelectric projects. Kyrgyzstan, of course, has huge quantities of gold, in which there has been foreign investment from Canada and some of the other countries. But Tajikistan, which has a population of about 9, 10 million, so they have large supplies of water, and they are constructing hydroelectric dams so that they could supply electricity to the South Asian countries like Pakistan and some of the others. But they are extremely important in terms of their strategic location. And let me then briefly come to the issue of Afghanistan that you have raised, because these three countries, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, these are the three countries that share common borders with Afghanistan. Tajikistan has about 1,300 kilometers, Uzbekistan about 137 kilometers, and Turkmenistan about 800 to 900 kilometers. So whatever happens in Afghanistan obviously has an impact on these three countries, and also Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, which do not directly share borders, but which will have the impact will be felt in those countries also. Now, let me complete India's relations with these countries in their post-independence period. Right at the beginning, India looked at these countries very carefully because of the strategic location. And we had our then Prime Minister, P.V. Narasimha Rao. He visited four of these countries, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan in '93, and Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan in '95. After that, we had the visit of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Tajikistan, which had not been visited so far, in 2003. And then Dr. Manmohan Singh visited Uzbekistan in 2006 and Kazakhstan in 2011. So we can see that from 1991, when these countries became independent, till 2011, there were just about 4 or 5 visits at the highest level, at the operational executive level. There were ministerial visits both ways. There were visits from the Central Asian countries to India, but from India to these countries, there were not that many visits. And that can be explained by a number of reasons. I will not go into it. But the fact is that right at the beginning of the independence, we did see that they were strategically and economically very significant, but it could not be taken forward in subsequent years. Then we have really given a significant push to our relations with these countries when Prime Minister Modi assumed power in May 2014. He, in fact, became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit all these 5 countries in July 2015. He started with Uzbekistan on the 6th of July, then he came to Kazakhstan, and then he had to fly to Ufa in Bashkortostan, Russia, for the SCO meeting and the BRICS meeting. And then he came back again and visited all the 3 other countries. So that really provided a significant impetus to our relations with these countries. We had the visit in 2017 of the presidents of Kyrgyzstan and of President of Tajikistan. We have another shot in the bilateral ties that was given when we had a change of leadership in Uzbekistan, when Mr. Shaukat Mirzayev became the president in December 2016. And we have had the visit of President Mirzayev to India in 2018. That was a state visit. And then he came again in January 2019 for the Vibrant Gujarat Summit. So these high-level visits, of course, provide a very strong impetus to the bilateral ties. We have seen that Prime Minister Modi visited, after his visit in 2015, he again visited this region. 2016, he visited Tashkent, that is Uzbekistan, for the SEO summit. 2017, he visited Astana again for the, which is now called Nur Sultan. He visited again for the SEO summit, and 2019 for the Bishkek summit. One aspect I would like to underline here is that in these countries, decisions are basically taken at the highest level. So if we need to give a significant impetus to our relationship, visits of ministers and vice presidents and others are relevant, are significant, are important, and should be encouraged and promoted. But really, the final decision, the critical decisions are taken at the level of the presidents of these countries and the prime minister of our country. So as I said, there have been these exchanges, and we also had a virtual summit between President Shaukat Mirziyoyev and Prime Minister Modi in December 2020. So what I can say is that relations are good, are positive. We have started developing the Chabahar port after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Iran in 2016, after the sanctions were lifted by President Barack Obama in 2015, and work on Chabahar port started, and there has been also export of cargo from India via Chabahar to Afghanistan. And this trade has been taking place, although not at the full potential. Uzbekistan is also extremely interested in making full use of the Chabahar port. And so when there was the summit that took place in December 2020, that I said about the virtual summit, then there was a trilateral that was organized with Afghanistan also. So there is a quadrilateral that has been formed with Iran, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, and India, so that both Chabahar as well as the International North-South Transport Corridor, which has been thought about, but on which not much work has been done, not much progress could take place, but now things are happening on that. So that is also becoming functional, and India has proposed that earlier this year that Chabahar should also be made a part of this International North-South Transport Corridor. So what I can say is that strategically and politically, our relations with these countries are good, but we need to add more flesh and substance to our partnership by having more investments, by having more trade. The potential is huge, but we need to promote, engage, encourage, urge our private sector to go into this area and to take full advantage of the potential that exists. Now, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, of course, there we have seen that since President Biden announced that the US forces would be leaving by the 20th anniversary of 9/11, the Taliban has been on a rampage, and there has been an upsurge. We have heard recently that 2 of the provincial capitals have also been taken over. They have claimed that they have about 85 to 90% of the territory. But I think the more accurate number seems to be about 50-55% of the territories under their control. And so the violence by the Taliban has increased. Taliban had made all these promises to the United States in February 2020 that they will sever all the links with Al-Qaeda, that they will reduce incidents of violence, and that they will negotiate seriously with the Afghan government and other Afghan stakeholders and elements about the future complexion of the governing structure in Kabul, but they have not done so. So that creates problems for, of course, many other regional countries, for India also. But since we are discussing only Central Asia here, let me focus on Central Asia. We saw that in June 23, we had about more than 100 Afghan soldiers that fled to Tajikistan. Then on 27 June, again, we had more than 20 Afghan soldiers fleeing to Afghanistan and taking refuge there. We had a similar case on the Uzbek border, but Uzbekistan did not allow them to enter because Uzbekistan told these soldiers that this was against international law and that they could not come in. So the basic problem as far as the neighboring countries, Central Asian countries are concerned is not so much about Taliban, because Taliban maintains that they want to establish an Islamic emirate in Afghanistan, and they do not have ambitions to go out of the Afghan borders. But there are a large number of other elements that are fighting along with them. For instance, there is Al-Qaeda, there is Islamic State, there's Jaish-e-Mohammed, there's Lashkar-e-Taiba, there are the Tajik soldiers, the Tajik young men and women who had gone and joined the ISIS in Syria. And when ISIS was defeated there, they have come and formed groups here in Afghanistan. So the Ansarullah group, which is principally comprised of Tajik fighters, is based in Afghanistan. And they could go into Tajikistan and create problems for the Islamic Jihad Union, comprised principally of Uzbek fighters and militants, and they could also go to Uzbekistan. Then we also have the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan. So all these forces are there, and they could create problems for these bordering Central Asian states. Now there are, of course, Russia is the security provider as far as Central Asian countries are concerned. And Russia has its largest base, 201 base in Tajikistan. And they have been carrying out military drills and military exercises so that the borders are not breached, because there are elements of Islamic State and other terrorist units in different parts of Russia. And Russia is very apprehensive that if there are problems on its soft underbelly in the Central Asian states, then this could definitely flow into the Russian Federation also. And there have been a number of terrorist attacks that have been carried out in Russia, principally by Central Asian actors, Central Asian militants. So they are afraid of that. And the Uzbeks are also afraid of that. Now, there are 3 countries in this which are members of the Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, which is a Russia-led security outfit in the post-Soviet structure, that is Tajikistan, that is Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. So they will all work together to ensure that these elements from here do not come in. Now, as far as China is concerned, China has emerged as a very big economic player because of its Belt and Road Initiative in this area. It has huge economic investments, but it also suffers from a problem, particularly with the two of the neighboring states, that is Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, because of the concentration camps of the Uyghur Muslims. And they are oppressed. America has said it's a genocide. Canadian Parliament, a committee of the Canadian Parliament has also termed it as a genocide. The European Union Parliament has also stated it's a genocide that is being committed by China. They are completely destroying the religion, the culture, the customs, tradition of the Uyghurs. There is systematic rape, there are forced sterilizations, there's forced labor. So there are some of the people from Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan who are also living in that in Xinjiang, and they have also been incarcerated. So the image of China in these countries is not very good. There are demonstrations, there are protests, but as far as the government and the elite is concerned, they are on very good terms with the Chinese leadership, the Chinese Communist Party. But as far as the people are concerned, there are definitely problems. Also because of the massive exploitation of natural resources by China in these countries, it is not really looked upon very favorably, particularly in these two countries. In Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, it is Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, it is not so bad. Tajikistan is also not so bad because the Tajiks are not of Turkic origin. They are more of Persian origin. Their language is also more Persian. So that basic issue is with these two countries. China also has a sort of a military base in Tajikistan, which it says has been stationed there to protect its economic interests. So all in all, it is a very uncertain situation. It's a very difficult situation. And whatever happens in Afghanistan will definitely have a very significant impact on the situation, on the stability and security in Central Asian countries. Professor Gaur.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I was just listening like a student, and there was nothing to ask you. You have very comprehensively covered all the aspects of the issue. But I would also like to request you to say something about Pakistani perspective, how it impacts India. India is very much concerned because of terrorism and all that. And Pakistan has also got borders with these countries. So Pakistani perspective on Central Asia, how does it affect India?
Well, Pakistan has been trying to get close to Central Asia, and they have not been really successful. They have tried to use the religion card, the Islamic card, because Pakistan is a Sunni state. All these countries are also Sunni republics. So they have used that particular card to reach out to these countries, but they have not really been successful in terms of, if you look at it in terms of bilateral trade, bilateral commerce, although they are neighbors, they are much closer, but they have really not been successful. But under the current circumstances, because China has constructed the China-Pakistan economic corridor, so Pakistan and China, they are planning to extend the CPEC to Afghanistan. And so that is one of their interests. The other is to make Afghanistan also a part of the BRI. So once Afghanistan gets integrated into the CPEC, into the BRI, and all these Central Asian countries are already a part of the BRI, then there would be much greater, it is expected that there would be much greater interchange, exchange of trade and other relations and other things. But right now, the relations between Islamabad and these countries are very modest, if I can put it that way. And the second aspect possibly that I could mention is about this rather ambitious project of Uzbekistan from Tashkent to Mazar-e-Sharif to Kabul to Peshawar. So this is a railway line that they have been thinking about. This is going to cost about $5 billion. And many of the international lending agencies have also come into play. They have expressed interest. They said it might take about 5 years or so to construct. But I have doubts about the economic viability of this particular project. Number one, in terms of, because of the security situation, how will it be constructed through Afghanistan and then going on to Peshawar? Unless there is peace, unless there is tranquility, it is not possible that this railway line will be constructed. And even if it is, and from Peshawar it joins the CPEC and goes to Gwadar for its trade, I think it's going to find it difficult because the route through Termez and Herat and then to Chabahar, Saranj, and then to Chabahar, I think is going to be much quicker and shorter for Uzbekistan. Of course, as far as Uzbekistan is concerned, we have to keep in mind that it has always been keen to reach out because since it's only the second doubly landlocked country in the world, so it is wants to reach out to the warm waters of the seas, and that is why sorry, it's very keen to join the Chabahar project. It's very keen to join the International North-South Transport Corridor project. It is also looking keenly at this Kabul-Peshawar railway line and then joining on to CPEC. But I think it is not going to prove to be a worthwhile connection, even if it were to be constructed, because security situation, the terrain through which the railway line will have to be constructed, I think that in itself will be very challenging. And then, when I was in Kazakhstan, I was ambassador to Kazakhstan. At that time, Pakistan tried a great deal to get convoys from Kyrgyzstan, from Bishkek, up to Kashgar, and from there to Pakistan and down below to Karachi. At that time, Gwadar was not really functioning. But they tried twice, and once there was a landslide, so it could not, that convoy of many, they had got many cars, many diplomats, many ambassadors, and businessmen included, but there was a landslide and it could not, the visit could not take place. And second time when they reached Pakistan, there was a terrorist attack. This was the time when Benazir Bhutto was killed in December of, I think, 2009 or so. So a terrorist attack took place and it was, it could not be completed. So I think it came out, it was brought clear to them that this route was not safe and could not be used on a regular basis. So I think there are challenges. There are challenges, and going forward, there's a limit up to which Pakistan's relations with Central Asia can be taken forward.
Thank you very much. And I think one more aspect of this subject is US expectations from Central Asian states in view of their withdrawal from Afghanistan. And they are still trying to have their base intact in Central Asian states, but that is being opposed by Russia and all that. And I think Central Asia has become a, power rivalry place for these major powers. So how do you see this US perspective towards Central Asian states in the context of the withdrawal from Afghanistan?
That's an excellent question because the United States has always looked upon so far the Central Asian states basically through the prism of Afghanistan. In terms of, when they had problems with Pakistan, then how could they reach to Afghanistan through the Central Asian states? And you would recall that that was the time when the North Distribution Network was created through Riga, Latvia, through Russia and Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan. Their non-military, non-lethal supplies would reach Afghanistan. But right now, what you say is very right, that when they are disengaging from Afghanistan, and by the end of the month, I think all their disengagement would be complete, they have been looking at establishing some sort of bases in these Central Asian countries. Now, it would not be new for them to have these bases because the United States had a base in Uzbekistan from 2001 when the 9/11 attacks took place up to 2005 when there was the problem in Andijan in Uzbekistan, and the Uzbek government under President Islam Karimov had acted saying that these were Islamic terrorists, and they had fired at them, they had shot at them. Many of them were killed, and as a result, the United States was asked to take its base away from there. So in Uzbekistan, they were there from 2001 to 2005. And in Kyrgyzstan, at the Manas Air Base, they were there from 2001 till 2014, because you would recall that Barack Obama had said that he would bring back all the forces by 2014. And there was also pressure on Kyrgyzstan from the Russian Federation that they should ask the Americans to leave. So they've had bases there in other countries also, France, Germany, etc. They've had bases in Uzbekistan, they've had bases in Kyrgyzstan, and so on and so forth. And those bases have gone back, those personnel have gone back only now. So the United States has been trying to see whether it can have bases in Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan or Tajikistan. But it is my view that they will not be allowed bases in those countries from the situation as it and existed in 2001 when the 9/11 attack took place. At that time, there was much greater support for the United States. The United States was a much bigger power, much stronger power. It was really, that was the unipolar moment in the world, although that had been dented to an extent by the 9/11 attacks, but still it was the preeminent power in the world. But today the situation is different. Its relations with Russia have become very sour. Its relations with China are hugely adverse. China has become a much stronger player on the geopolitical plane than it was at that time. And Russia also has become a much bigger player after its entry into the Syrian arena in September of 2014. So China and Russia are stronger. United States is weaker. United States also, so these two countries would definitely oppose the United States having a base in their region. although these two countries have benefited hugely as a result of American presence in Afghanistan, because while America has been engaged and involved in dealing with terrorism there, both China and Russia have focused on their own political, economic, military development and growth. And that is why we find that today the United States is much weaker, and these two countries have emerged as much stronger contenders on the global stage. But the presence of the United States so close to the borders, as far as China is concerned, to the border with Xinjiang, where there are problems with the Uyghur Muslims, and for Russia in its soft underbelly, this would definitely not be to their liking. So Tajikistan will definitely not be agreeable to this. So also Kyrgyzstan, because it is the new president has come only recently, Sadir Japarov, and he is too dependent for funds on China and for political and military support on Russia. He will also not allow it. And as far as Uzbekistan is concerned, the relations with the United States are very good, but I am very doubtful whether President Mirzayev will be willing to go ahead with the United States and incur the displeasure of China and Russia. I think Uzbekistan has much more to gain by having stronger relations with China and Russia, which are neighbors, rather than having providing bases and getting some resources from there, which will really not be adequate to what it will have to forego as far as its relations with Russia and China are concerned. So I don't think that the United States will be able to get bases. I think what United States really needs to do is look upon the Central Asian states for what they are worth and have independent relations with them. A beginning of sorts was made when Mr. Kerry was the Secretary of State, having a C5+1, that is the 5 Central Asian countries and United States. And this was has been taken forward by Mr. Blinken, the new Secretary of State, who also organized a C5+1 meeting with them. So the Central Asian countries are important in their own right. So along with the European Union, along with India and some like-minded countries, these countries need to go to Central Asia and strengthen and promote relationship, infrastructure development in these countries, border management of these countries for these countries' sake, and not look at them through the prism only of stability and security in Afghanistan.
Thank you very much. You have covered very comprehensively, I would say, all the aspects of the subject, India's relations with Central Asia and the current scenario because of US withdrawal from Afghanistan. At the end of this conversation, I would like to request you, my intern wants to ask a question to you.
Surely.
Yes, sir, as you have been the director of Jawaharlal Nehru Cultural Center, I would like to know what can India do to enhance its cultural diplomacy, and has India been able to optimize the potential of its historical linkages with so many countries in the globe, and where are we lacking? What can be done?
Great
in
question.
Which areas?
Yeah. Great question, Kashfa. I think, yes, because India is a civilizational state. India has a very long heritage going back to about 10,000 years. And we need to focus on that. I think we need to focus on that even in our own country, because our own people do not know our history so very well, our heritage so very well, what has been glorious times that we've had. I think we focus much more on modern and contemporary history. I think all of us know what Lord Curzon did, what Lord Bentinck did, who removed the Sati Pratha, etc., etc. But hardly any one of us knows, exactly what the golden age of the Gupta period, what did Harshvardhan do uh, about South India in terms of, the reigns of Chalukyas, the reigns of the Pandavas, the reigns of the Cholas, the reigns of the Kakatiyas, all of that. The glory of India is not known to Indians themselves, but we need to learn and we need to take it forward. Now, how do we take it forward? Of course, on the face of it, de jure, we have been trying to do. We have established a large number of cultural centers in a large number of countries. But I think we really need to focus on, and we established chairs of study also in many of these countries. They need to focus on what India was. I think some beginning has been made when we speak about, the International Day of Yoga. That is, the gift of India. And yoga is not only physical exercise, it's a synthesis of mind and body and what it does. In the time of the COVID-19 pandemic also, what pranayam can do, what breathing can do, what Ayurveda can do, how these are systems which have been with us for the last 10,000 years. So it is not only Bollywood. I agree, Bollywood is popular, Bollywood is well known. So, there is no point in negating it, disregarding it, but give it the position that it deserves. Our dance, our music, our culture, they need to be promoted. Our literature needs to be promoted. Our philosophy needs to be promoted. Our thought needs to be promoted. And our current ideas, our current literature. So, the challenge is huge. And basically, we have got these cultural centers. So on the ground, we are present, but now how to utilize them to the fullest extent so that we are able to reach out and we are able to sort of, as far as the global community is concerned, the only thing that they know about India, and when you go that they will ask you about India, is about the caste system in India. And fine, caste system is an issue, it's a problem, but I'm sure you will agree that it does not occupy the mind space of people 24/7. It is something that every one of us is getting out of. There are stringent laws, etc. But it is not something that is the only content of Indian thought and Indian philosophy. So I think whether it is India's secularism, India's, all communities have lived together for millennia, and India has always been hospitable to divergent thoughts. When St. Thomas came to India in 52 CE, he was welcomed here. The Jews have been here in India for thousands of years. So I think what are the strengths of the country? They need to be protected. People need to have a real understanding, a good understanding of what India is, what India means, and what India's contribution can be to the world in general. So this is what I think Prime Minister Modi tries to do, whether it is the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is on the basis of which we want to work within the country and also outside, whether it is our vaccine Maitri initiative, that we had vaccines, but we gave it out to those countries which would not otherwise have received. So I think these are the sort of aspects that we need to project, we need to take forward. It's a very serious business. But culture and soft policy succeeds when you have hard power. Without hard power, soft power does not get you very far. And in that context, what I would like to suggest is India needs to focus on becoming economically strong. So what we have said is that India should become a $5 trillion economy by 2025-26, because now because of the COVID, it will go forward a little bit. India needs to become a $5 trillion economy. We need to do it very fast. Our exports need to grow. In terms of manufacturing, we need to grow. I'm very happy that our Prime Minister had an interaction with our heads of missions abroad yesterday. And he also spoke about the urgent need to increase our exports. And in terms of research, in terms of creativity. So I think these are all things we need to do both domestically at home and also in terms of our projection forward. The last point I will say here is that, the reflection cannot be brighter than the original image. And the original image is what India is. So if we want the reflection to be good, we have to become stronger ourselves going forward. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much. I'm really grateful to you for sparing time. And I knew that no one else could have explained things better about Central Asia, because I've heard you on so many occasions, attended the events where you were the chief guest and main speaker. And last time it was at India International Center that we had an opportunity. So let me thank you once again. And I assure you that this video will be not only uploaded on the YouTube, it will be sent to all the universities, research organizations, not only in India, but also abroad. Because in certain countries, we have been asked to allow our articles on PRC Journal and these videos as a suggested reading material for the university students. So we readily give our permission, and I think your views will be circulated throughout the world, particularly the university, where India and its relations with various regions are researched and taught. So thank you very much once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Gaur. Let me add my words of gratitude and appreciation to you. It has been a great pleasure for me to interact with you. Your questions have been very incisive and very thought-provoking. So I have, in fact, spoken on all these issues. There was no prepared text or anything, just on the basis of your questions, and I have enjoyed it very much. And also, Kashfa, I have enjoyed your being on this program and your question also. I wish all the very best to you, Professor Gaur, and look forward to further opportunities of collaboration and cooperation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was a really enlightening session. I really enjoyed it.